Howdy of you delicious people. I'm here today to review I Am Number 4. So, the one thing that I will immediately say for a lot of people who have read the books, because that's usually what happens when you have a movie that's based on a book and they only do one movie of it, really we can say here that the book and the movie are drastically different. Where it kind of feels like this movie isn't to have put much of any effort into it, because really they just want another teen drama movie book thing, and so really that's as much effort as they're really going to go on and put into this movie. Really is just wanting to put another teen movie out there that of course is done in another high school thing. Even having John, instead of just laying low and going on and just kind of staying home, we have John desperately going, no, I need to go to the high school. I need to go on and learn. I need to have to go on and be bullied and be beaten up because his story desperately needs it to happen. And Henry's like, whoa, 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 you're right. Because I read the script too. High five. Really, to me, like, a lot of people could go on and, like, I don't know why there's this connection here, but a lot of people are comparing this movie to Twilight, and I don't really quite exactly understand that. I can really write this off more as, like, a Smallville kind of thing. Uh, like, this feels like a Smallville kind of movie with the exclusion of the whole farm-like thing going on, because neither one of these guys are farming or really doing much of anything in this film, besides going and noticing that there's a Cleveland Browns football poster upon a wall that's to be from a guy named Bernie. Okay, sure. So going into this film, like, I would say that this movie does have some interesting action, but really when it comes down to it, it seems that they're focusing way more on John's best friend Sam than anybody else in this movie. It feels like Sam has a lot more for them to just kind of like grab from and tell us here than any number of any of these characters. Everyone else is just far too bland, or it's just like, okay, insert character here to be a person to just eat up time. Really, we don't know who these characters are, and we don't get enough time to have them being fleshed out. And by that time, the movie is ending, and so, like, we don't really understand why is it that number 6 has all these, like, blaster guns and all of this stuff with her, but guys like Henry is to just have it, hey, look at this, like spear-looking weapon, which is, like, really, like, flimsy. I'm like, wait a minute. How is it all of a sudden that number 6 has all these, like, blasters and whatever, and it seems like everybody and the brother has really cool weaponry here, and Henry just has this, like, flimsy dagger-like thing, like this flimsy, like, sword dagger alien thing looking. I don't know what it was actually called, because heaven forbid you actually technically call anybody what they're actually called in this film, because good god, I don't know how many times in this movie, when going and reading a simple wiki explanation of this film, we have Henry, who is just to be said is a guardian or warrior, when actually he's a K-Pan or a Keypan or a C-Pan. I'm not quite sure the pronunciation, and of course I'm not going to bother to... K-Pan? I'm assuming K-Pan. Let's go with that. Or K-Pon? I don't know. I'm not a book specialist, but we also go on and have it seemingly be the villains of this story immediately have to come and we have to like chop a bulk their name off to just call them Mogs. We can't call them Mogadorians. Their names. It seems like they every once in a while go and say they're Mogadorians, but then they just call them Mogs for this movie because we have so much time where we're cutting corners in this film. We have so much time where we're trying to go on and just have the teen story, the teen focused story, where of course John is getting bullied, uh, because he's different. Different meaning that he doesn't want to easily and quickly go onto a football field or play some sport of some kind. So immediately he's like, "Oh, well, he's an outsider. We need to shun him, and we need to beat him up because he doesn't like sports." Dude, didn't you see the early parts of this movie where he's like jet skiing and having fun? That's a sport, jet skiing. I don't know. Like that just seems so like you're lumping a person into like two different categories. It's either they love a sport or if they don't, then they're like you have to bully them for whatever goofy reason. Uh, but we have a number of people that just aren't like the only person that really matters is Sam. Like he gets a backstory. He gets a dad that is to supposedly be off screen and is to be somehow being the one that is to help out the Lorians without them even knowing. Uh, so so yeah. Um, we also have at some point some monsters that we don't really know who they are. Uh, that eventually go to the third part of this movie where it's just like, okay, I guess that's just the beast. That's just crawl. That's just monsters. What are these things called? I don't know. Um, Hence why in the very beginning of this film, I'm like, okay, I have to figure out what that monster is, but I can't really tell what it is because the very beginning of this movie is far too dark. That helps. Thanks, movie, for being dark. I appreciate it. I think it's dark for a reason, so that way they could kind of skip on the money for one, special effects, and two, having a guy that is to go on and be flipping and tripping and whatever, and you probably don't want to have people easily be able to see that it's a stunt double for whatever part of this film. So, with that said, I would say that this movie has to go into the realm of it's an interesting film, but really I feel that this movie is too generic. It's too bland for me. Um, but there's something about it where it's interesting, but I guess it also made enough money to garner a sequel film. But weirdly, because I guess the critics and they went on to badmouth it and chew it up and spit it out, and I'm sure probably the author of the books was just like, "This is what you came up with." More than like they're just like, "Yeah, you're not gonna come up with something else." Like I'm sure probably the author probably pulled out after watching this movie and just going like, wow, like they did nothing. Like they really gave nothing into a 2 hour film. Um, but anyways, let's go out of our way to go into spoilers about this one. Let's go on and do that double five time territory because it's about that time for us to go into this thing called spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this movie. HBO Max, if you dare in fact want to check this out, because without a doubt, there's probably only going to be ever one of these films, or if they remake it or redo it or whatever, it's probably going to be so close to the book that your ears will bleed and your eyes will bleed and you'll start having lights coming out of your hands for whatever goofy reason. So, light it up. Hey guys, I'm number 4. I have lights coming out of my hands. Sure. Um, the only time that we're ever gonna have this kind of movie, uh, the light coming out of their hand guy. Uh, no offense to this film, like there's some kind of fun thing about it. It is like a unique alien piece. Um, I like how this movie kind of feels different than a lot of other stuff, or it tries to be different at some points of it, but then it also tries to be heavily generic. Um, so with that said, let's go and uncover all of this generic, and let's go out of our way to say that it's about the time. Let's go into spoilers. So, very beginning of the film, we of course have uh, a guy on IMDb who is just called number 3. But luckily, I have this thing called a Wikipedia, and so we of course have number 3, who is known as Hanu or Hana. Of course, number 3 is in Kenya because they couldn't have been bothered to tell you that either. And so we of course have Hana, who is in this, like I would call it. It looks like kind of like a hammock of sorts. It doesn't legitimately look like a bed, but it looks like a kind of a hammock kind of approach to a bed. Um, Not quite sure what Kenya is to call that for a bed, but it is what it is. So all of a sudden we're in Kenya in the beginning of this film, and so all of a sudden we have both Hana and his guardian, which is to be a Kapa or Capon, his guardian warrior, who is to hear some rumblings. So we all of a sudden go on and have a beast who is to crash through this place to go on and try and attack both his guardian and number 3. So we go on here, and we of course have it where, surefire enough, we of course have number 3's guardian who is to be killed here, and so now we have Hanu or Hanan. I'm gonna go with Hana. I'm gonna go with that. So we have number 3 Hanan, who goes and he's flipping and flopping and parkouring his way to try and escape from this beast, to then go into the clutches of the Mogs, where they are to go and grab him by the neck and then go and stab into him, and he is to all of a sudden basically turn into ashes. And I'm just like, wait a minute, like, is this Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the series? Or like, I'm like, what's going on here? Like, did they just want to take the same exact effect of, like, that show? Because it feels like that's what's happening here. It feels like everybody's dying, like the vampires are on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I don't really get that. I didn't really ever get that on that show either. Why all of a sudden, like, they would turn into this, like, kind of concrete-looking thing, and then they would just, like, dust away. Like, that always seemed just weird and goofy to me. But it is what it is with that show. So we go on here, and we then just have a very odd transition to all of a sudden have John, who of course is jet skiing with a group of guys, having fun. And so we go on and we have, of course, John, who is invited to this party, and it seems that, of course, John is looking on as this one girl named Nicole, who I guess is to be the top girl to go and try to get. John is to desperately go, ooh, maybe I can win her over. So John, of course, is to go on to this party, and while going on to this party, it seems that Nicole, which, fingers crossed, I'm hoping that Nicole was to go on and want to skinny dip, because I don't remember actually her, and actually, like, it was so dark. Would have been a bit blah, blah, blah. Wouldn't it have been interesting to have these just two people skinny dipping? But no, like it's Jaws all over again. So all of a sudden, while John is trying to get with Nicole, all of a sudden his leg is starting to light up, like it's like he has a cell phone and like in his leg, and someone's trying to call him. It's the Dark Knight all over again. Is that some kind of contusion? So all of a sudden Nicole is like not really understanding what's going on with John here, and so she runs off to her friends and calls John some freak because John's leg is weirdly lighting up. So we go and we find out that the light that is coming from his leg is simply the branding that he is to go on and get, because the Mogs are to go on and realize that every single one of these Lorians are to have these medallions, necklaces, and whatever out of the 9, and who are, of course, all guards, and or guard. Weird. Anyways, so I think they're called the guard. I don't know, it's weird, it's goofy. So we go on and we have John who gets branded, and so now, of course, we have Henry that's telling John, hey, we're going to be pulling the ripcord on this town. We're going to get out of here because, of course, what had happened to your leg. And so John is telling Henry that it was different this time around, and John could actually go on and see number 3 dying and feel it. And so we, of course, have Henry's like, well, yeah, like, so we just, like, we gotta move on. John, of course, is keeping effects and personal items, like photos and stuff like that. And Henry is to say, God, like, all this stuff is just a waste. Because every time that you go on, you keep stuff like this, we just have to go on and find it and burn it. And it's just a waste of time. Because we have it to where both John and Henry are to consistently move on. And so in every town, we have to go on and have John change his name to a different person and dye his hair in this movie to be much more blonde. So we go on here, and of course we have now Henry saying that he has business in Ohio, so they're going to go off to a place called Paradise in Ohio. So we go on here and we showcase the sign that is to be Paradise, Ohio. And so during this moment, we of course have John having to explain to us who exactly he is, an alien from outer space, that nine of his kind of people were to come here away from the Mogs to try and live their own lives. And so we have the Mogs go and find out that the 9 are to be on this planet, and so they're going and trying to hunt them down for whatever reason. Like, we don't have it to where it's being world domination. We don't really have just a purpose, a reason, or nothing. Like, they're just hunting them down because I guess they can, because I guess they have nothing better to do. Because I don't see these people getting much more powerful every time they are to kill one of these things. What is the purpose? What is the reason? Because it's cool? Man, these guys have a weird definition of cool. So we go on, and we of course have Henry, who is going and taking a home that is foreclosured. So is anybody going to go on and double check to see if anybody's living in this house for whatever reason? Probably not, I guess. So we of course go on and have John saying next time he wants to choose the house because he knows they're probably going to be moving sometime soon. So we go on and we have John, who is to see a Cleveland Browns poster, and Henry is to easily rattle off like who this guy is, and I think he calls him Bernie something. Of course, from the Cleveland Browns, and that he plays football. Like, yeah, like I think John has been on this planet long enough to really understand what football is. And why is it Henry has that information? I don't know why, because it really doesn't matter. So, really, John is to, of course, get a cell phone from Henry after John is wanting to decide to go back to school and finish up his school year. And so, because Henry is going and calling the other school that John was supposed to be at and letting them know that he won't be there for the rest of the year. So, we go on and we, of course, have Henry giving John this phone and saying that he's going to call him every hour on the hour because once they're to basically be separated, we just have to have Henry here technically being an over-worried parent of John, so much so that Henry is supposed to come running if John doesn't answer his phone, which it seems like he does that through the whole entire film. Every once in a while he will answer it and say that he's fine, but yeah. So Henry's basically saying that this point where John is not answering his cell phone could possibly lead to life or death for John, but Henry really could care less. I don't know, like, it's we have this over-concerned dad character that says a thing but then doesn't even, like, beyond that point doesn't really give a about it, but I guess that's just me. So we go on and we have John, who's mentioning that he's from Santa Fe, Mexico, because at first John is to mention that he's from Canada, but Henry's like, no, that won't work. So John says, like, okay, like, I'm from Santa Fe, Mexico. I'm used to forging documents, and so, like, this will all work out. So we go on and we have John, who is to, of course, enlist himself into this school, and we all of a sudden have Principal Smith, who's going on and talking to Sarah, because it seems that there is to be some teacher who is to go on and find Sarah's website, weirdly, and is to be very offended by this teacher going on and picking his own nose in some classroom, and Sarah is to take a picture of it. It feels very weak, but whatever, this is a movie. So we of course go on and we have Sarah, and I guess I never really gave a grading of this movie. Like, I would just say that it's just I think it's a good waste of time, but it's not much of that. I feel that this is a bad film that could possibly always get watched. That I think there is some possibly redeeming quality of it, but still, it just, like, to me, it's just a goofy film that really doesn't try. Like, it's just a chucking of content to go out there because it's based on a book. That's really what I feel. So that's all that I want to say about I Am Number 4 as far as a grading thing. So, because I would rewatch this movie, I would. Even though it's a very oddball film, there's some good action. There's some good action parts about it, but I can't help but think that, like, man, just John's best friend Sam has way more stuff about him than anybody else in this film. How Sam has much more story about him than anyone else. Why does he have to be the most interesting character in this movie beyond even the whole main character? Because all John has is just him going and finding out his powers as if this is the season 1 of Smallville. So we go on here and we have, of course, now Sarah, who's going to have to guide John to help him figure out where things are. Having Sarah go and help John find his locker, help him go on and talk to him a little bit. It seems that John is to instantly realize that Sarah is to be a girl who's kind of taking inappropriate pictures with teachers and whatever, like inappropriate pictures meaning a picking of noses. And Sarah's like, "Oh, I guess you eavesdropped on that." And John is like, "Well, like when your principal's office is just a fish tank, you can kind of hear everything." So Sarah's just like, "Well, all of this is just a fish tank." So we have it to where we immediately know who's going to be the love interest of this film. But you would think that just number 6 would just have come in here way freaking earlier and gone on and be the love interest of number 4. Because it seems like there is some tension between these two characters towards the later of the part of the film. And there shouldn't be, because we already have it where John and Sarah are supposed to be lovers for life. Because that's the way of which that the Lorians love. They love for life. So, hence why when we go on into if there was ever to be a sequel, I bet something was going to happen to where they were either going to recast Sarah, or they were probably going to go on and have it be that Sarah was dead or something. They would probably have to write her off this story. So that way John would probably have to move on to somebody else, probably. I don't know how the stories went, but I think there's something about that where they would probably, like, if they recasted the same people, I would be surprised. But I think after that, they would probably just focus on the road trips, and John probably wouldn't find love again, probably. But moving on. So, speaking of number 6, number 6 is to go on and try to find out possibly where number 4 is. Going through and finding his old stomping grounds and going on and finding some picture. And so we have number 6 going on and lighting this place ablaze by going on and turning on this oven. And as she's going on listening to Adele as her has John and Henry's old place is exploding, so she can go and walk off and showcase to us that number 6 can shield herself from this blast. So I guess she's fire resistant, as John is to say at some point about that towards the end of this film. So we go on, and of course, when John is to go through his locker, we all of a sudden have the bully of this movie, who is to, of course, be a guy named Mark, going on and asking John, like, "Hey, man, do you like any sports? Do you like ping pong? Do you like football? Do you like anything?" And John's just like, "No." So Mark is just like, "Okay, cool. Well, hey, like it seems like Mark at first is to try to be this guy's friend, but when all of a sudden we of course have it where it seems that Mark is wanting to easily bully Sam here and go on and hit him with footballs and saying, "Hey man, it's a UFO." We all of a sudden have eventually John wanting to step in and wanting to say, like, "Hey, like, I'm an alien," and it seems like this guy is to be much more accepting of aliens and so on and so forth, as Sam's whole entire life is to be one marathon of X-Files, I guess, and everybody is to joke about that. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So John eventually goes on here and is to, of course, uh, go throughout his first day, and we of course have Henry, who is consistently calling every hour on the hour, even if it's school. So John really just ignores the calls. So purposely, like he like sees Henry's calling, is like click ignore. So now we go on and we are, I guess, since number 3 is now dead, and I guess Henry could never have been bothered to train John at all on what is going to be his future powers, or that I guess maybe John may finally be hitting puberty and all of a sudden his powers are starting to kick in. Not quite sure. For those of you who are people that have read the book, let me know about whether or not how exactly these people's powers kicked in. I'm assuming that it would probably have to go and be like a puberty thing, because when looking at it, how old was the Kenya kid for him to just be flipping and flopping, and it didn't seem like he was using much of any power. So, and it also seemed that 6 is to also like have her power also, so it probably seems like a coming of age kind of thing. So, for this alien race. So, called the Lorians. So it's Mogadorian and it's Lorian, and so feels like one and the same. So yeah, so we go on here and we of course have John, uh, who is to see that Sam is to get bullied by getting hit with this football, and so John goes on and is checking on Sam, and Sam is telling John, it's like, hey, I'm definitely one guy that you don't want to be friends with. So John goes on and is to take this football and is to pelt one of Mike's friends and kind of knocks him back, to where Mark is asking the one guy, like, hey, are you okay? And he's like, no. So, like, he probably really got the wind knocked out of him, or probably some ribs broken or whatever. But we have it to where, like, John can really throw a football, and all of a sudden Sarah is desperately going on and trying to take, like, pictures, like, not really going on and, like, doing much of, like, real camera stuff here. It just feels like she's just, like, taking pictures, and it just feels like there's not really much of an effort there. So, just feels like it at some points. But, because it seems that Sarah's really intrigued, and for the fact that Sarah used to date Mark, and so I guess anybody who's going up against Mark, Sarah is really interested by. So we go on and we later have it where John, of course, is to find out that Sarah is to have this site called Strangers in Paradise, where she goes on and is posting a number of pictures about people that are in her town. And coincidentally, it seems that Sarah had taken a number of pictures of John, kind of like stalker-ish. So we all of a sudden have, of course, Henry, who is to go through a number of filters and stuff like that, going on and taking the picture of John and trying to figure out through any social medias or any sites or anywhere if there's any photos or anything that exists of John. And so we go on here and we have John, who's realizing that Sarah might be really interested in him, taking a number of pictures of him, and so all of a sudden Henry is to go and wipe out all of those pictures that are, of course, on that Stranger of Paradise site. Where Henry is going and saying to John, it's like, I thought I told you to be invisible. Like, what do you think that means? Like, you were there when I told you, like, to be invisible, right? Like, you were there with that conversation where I was talking to you. So, but, like, John wants to live his life. Like, I get it that, like, I guess John wants to just be a kid of his age. But, man, we all just can't know everything just by playing Xbox a lot, right? I know everything about this movie just by playing Xbox a lot, right? Yeah. So, because that's the one goofy line in here where we, of course, have Sam was like, "Hey, I play a lot of Xbox. I know what I'm doing." Sure you do. So we go on at one point, and eventually, John is going on and bumping into Sarah, and we, of course, have John asking Sarah about that whole Strangers in Paradise website, and Sarah's like, "Oh yeah, you found that, huh?" And so John is to start asking stuff about that, and so we go on here and we have both Jaren's Sarah and John who go to, of course, Sarah's house with her parents and her brother to go and eat dinner. And all of a sudden, we of course have Sarah's phone that goes off, and so both Sarah's parents are wanting, of course, the phones to go away, so they can just go and sit down and eat dinner. So we go on here, and we of course have it where their parents are going on and talking about Sarah, who had gotten far too tan, and that they still have a picture of that, where Sarah, I guess, was to try and spray tan, and that was a big mistake. And then she had gone on to go into picture day looking heavily tanned. And so we go on here, and after that kind of joke and that whatever, that mistake, we then go on and have both John and Sarah who are going upstairs, and like Sarah is kind of mentioning that her parents are like trying to be cool and whatever, and John's like, you know what, I get that. So we go on and we have John and we have Sarah, who are of course having us try to get a little bit more about Sarah beyond her just taking photos. We go and have her like showcasing that she is to also make a scrapbook. A scrapbook going on and saying that there is to be a possibility that this girl wants to have a lot more in this scrapbook besides just pictures of herself. But she doesn't have anything. So we go on here, and of course we have Sarah that is to eventually kind of close up the scrapbook and go on and give John this camera for him to go and take whatever kind of pictures that he wants, because instead of having Sarah just take pictures of John, like it feels that John should kind of turn around and start taking pictures of either himself or his life or his whatever. So let me pause here for 1 second. All right. So one thing that I forgot about, but I'm going to get back to in a second here. So we go on and we have John, who is to walk away from Sarah's house, to then go on and have Mark notice that John is walking away from Sarah's house. And so I guess Mark is to be this kind of pushy or stalker-ish like character that if anybody is going to date Sarah, then he's going to figure out a way to either hurt them or to tell them to go away or scare them off or something or other. So one thing let's get back to. We of course have John and Henry just kind of hearing some sounds outside their house. And so we of course have Henry thinking that it's the Mogs coming and trying to get to them, but we have John go out there and is to realize that it's just some dog instead. I think it's some like beagle or something like that. So, and if I'm right about that, that's amazing because I don't know about dogs. So, I don't know about dogs. So, we go on, and of course, we have John and Henry having this dog, and it seems like this dog has no collar. It seems that uh, really John is to say, it's like, well, hey, like, if I have this dog, I'll have someone to talk to. And Henry's like, well, hey, you can talk to me. And so John is just looking at Henry and he's like, okay, fine, we'll keep the dog. And so, of course, they're like, well, what do we name him? And so John quickly comes up with Bernie's name to just name the dog. And they're just like, okay, sure, that works. So so now that that's covered, so, because like the dog doesn't really feel all that important till like the very end of the film. Like we have every once in a while where the dog is going on or Bernie is going on and having Henry realize that the box that of course was John's dad's box is glowing at some point, but really that's all the dog really does until the very end. Every once in a while, going and finding, I think, Sam at one point and barking and whatever. There's a lot of that in this movie, but the dog isn't really all that useful to the very end of the film. So, speaking of which, John's dad was to have this box, whatever this weird goofy box is that they couldn't even bother to be shown what exactly it is in this movie of what this is in this box. You know what would have been cool if they would open this box up at the very end of this movie and realized it was something they vitally needed. Like, oh my god, this is a blaster. Oh mother. So like, what if it was something that hugely amplified John's power, and because they figured it out that there was a thing that could easily have amplified John's power in this box, and John would have been heavily ticked that. What if it was battle armor? What if it would have been any number of things inside this box that would have easily helped John beat all of these Mogs? Wouldn't that have just ticked a number of people off? But I'm sure anybody in the book could have said, like, oh, it's this item, it means nothing, and then it would have been like, okay, what's the whole thing about the box for? What's in the box? It's freaking Seven all over again. So we go on here, and so the very next day we of course have it, and I hope I've kind of covered a bulk of this movie at this point here, because really I'm not going to go back at any point. I'm not going to bother. So we go on, and of course we have Mark, who is to figure out a way to just make fun of these characters, both John and Sam here. So we of course have both John and Sam who open their locker at the exact same time to all of a sudden have this burst of paint being slapped upon their faces, and their lockers being ruined. So as like a prank thing. So we go on, and so Sam is to desperately try and clean one of these photos, as also having both John and Sam get some lost and found clothes, so that way they can wear. Like there was one time in high school where I had to wear like a specific gym uniform, and there was one day I went into my gym locker to go on and find out that somebody had stolen um, my gym clothes, and so I was kind of ticked about that. So I, of course, went on and had to use like the gym clothes from like the lost and found. I'm like, okay, great. And of course, there was like barely any real like uh, gym clothes for me to use, so it was just like, man, this sucks. So, because like, oh yeah, you could only wear these certain kind of clothes to this gym class. I'm like, really? Like you would think you could just buy any shirt and buy any pair of shorts and good enough, but I don't know. No offense to the gym people, but I just don't understand why you have to have a gym uniform to go into a gym class. Like, I think the later and later we had in the years, like we just went on and just were wearing anything that said like was like red or like had some of the school colors or whatever. Like we just wore like cardinal hoodies or what, we didn't care. Like we were just like, dude, how many years are we gonna still be doing gym? Oh, only half of the year. Why do we even need gym uniforms? This feels like a waste. Because we're only doing gym for a number of years, and really, when you go into like weight training or anything like that for the school, like you really don't give a about wearing like a school uniform to do any of those activities. So, what a waste that was. But anyways, yeah. Um, and a lot of times I would just wear whatever I'm going to be wearing for those activities. I would just be wearing them already because I just didn't care. I was just like, I was checking out for a lot of the high school stuff. So, and there's a lot of times where I just, there would be some days where I just didn't want to go to like weight training for the summer. It just, like, I was like, what's the difference that I'm really going to make? None? Okay, great. Because a lot of times I had to get up at a certain time in the morning. I just didn't care. Anyways, pushing on. Um, so we go on and we find out that Sam's photo is to, of course, be of his dad. And it's to be the only photo that Sam and his dad are to have. Coincidentally, online, we have Henry who is going and check on Sam's dad to find that exact same photo. And I'm like, man, like, what's the point of Sam desperately trying to cling on to this one photo when you could go and find it easily online somewhere and then probably print it out? I don't get it. Um, but I guess it's just the sentimental value of the photo, but still. So we go on and we have, of course, Sam saying that his dad was to be this guy who had worked at this mine, and he had gone on and found this one rock, and all of a sudden after finding this one rock, he started to believe in UFOs. He started to uh, think that there was a possibility that there is ancestral alien astronauts and all of this kind of goofy, bizarre sci-fi X-Files stuff. And so Sam, who I guess started to believe in it too, because he believed in his dad, was to go on and be the butt of the joke, simply because of who his dad is. Was to forcibly have him go on and be bullied by everybody at school. So pushing on here. So we go on and more have it where at some point or another John's powers are starting to get revealed to him. At one point, John is to go into class, and Mark is to go on and be like, you know what, John, like I'm sorry about what we had done to you, and so John is like, okay, whatever. All of a sudden, John's hands are starting to light up, and so John is desperately trying to run off, so that way he can go on to figure out how to take care of these powers. Going and having John's hands burning up, so he is desperately trying to dunk them into some janitor's mop water, and desperately trying to figure out how to stop this power from happening. Henry, all of a sudden, who is to miraculously know exactly what's going on here, because this feels like the Man of Steel moment, where Clark was going on and was to have his powers all start kicking in all at once, where he's having X-ray vision and all these other powers, and he runs off because he's saying the world is so big, and so Martha's saying it's like, well, shrink it down, like make it to where you can only hear me and me alone, and just focus on that. So kind of the same moment here. So we have John going and dunking his hands into this water, and so John is, of course, just like, oh my god, these powers, they're kicking off. So Henry's going and explaining to him, it's like, well, hey, like, yeah, it's your power, it's your legacies, it's your thing that you're going to get now, since you have gone on to, like, basically hit puberty, basically. So we, of course, now have both Henry and John, who are to just basically bail out on school and have John go home. And so we, of course, have Henry, who's telling John, it's like, well, hey, like, if anything, like, I want to, like, kind of keep you at home until, like, your powers can get maintained, and we'll bring you back to school. So we go on and we have John, who is trying to figure out these powers and be able to use them so that way he can hone and control them more, to the point of him going on and kind of testing these things out, testing what exactly he can do, to the point of him going on and flipping and hitting right onto this rock, kind of doing the superhero landing like thing. He's all cool and awesome and whatever. So we go on here, and we, of course, have it where John eventually gets so well with his powers that at one point he is going and fighting off Henry, because Henry is to want them to eventually pull the ripcord on this town and leave, especially once after we get to the whole Paradise Springs Scream thing. Of course, this carnival. So we go on, and of course we have I think Sam and John. No, we just have John and Sarah going to this Paradise Scream carnival, and so they go, and we had this very cliche-ish like carnival where it seems that the only thing that's really interesting for this carnival is to be this ferry ride, or this this horse and buggy ride through this supposed haunted house. So, or haunted field? That makes more sense. So we go on and have both Sarah and John go through this, and at the very tail end of it, all of a sudden we have Mark with a bunch of his friends going on and trying to attack John, tackle him into the night, and trying to beat up on him. So we go on and we have, of course, John very confused about what's actually going on. And it seems since Sarah is in danger because Sarah is to have been taken by John, we just have John who is to go and just use his powers to go and take these guys out. To just go and start using his light power and is to blind these guys because they're weirdly having these night vision goggles on. And so they're like, oh my god, how are you doing that? And so we have John just clearly just going on and beating all these guys up. And so I'm like, man, like, when did the Mogs come in this film? Like, we have no alien battle out. We have no real alien battle to the very end of this film. Like, all of this is just teen story, whatever. So, we of course have Mark, who's now severely jealous that Sarah is to have a new man in her life. And so, we of course have Mark being the overly jealous lover. So, John is to go and take Mark here and is going to like do some like wrestling moves on him, and then is to go on and almost break this guy's arm just because of how John is just so done with these guys, and he figures like how far does he need to go to teach them a lesson. So Sarah is telling John to stop, and because Sarah feels that it's wrong if John is to break this guy's arm. So we go on and we have John and we have Sarah just kind of walking away. So we, of course, had the very next day where, of course, Sheriff James is to talk to both Henry and John. And so Sheriff James is saying that evidently no one was talking, but like there's some witnesses or there's some people that know what's going on, and so like there's something just fishy about this whole thing. So we of course now have it where we have John and Henry. Henry is wanting to leave because he doesn't like that the Sheriff James is kind of suspicious of these guys, and so Henry's just like, you know what, let's pull the ripcord now, let's leave. And John is just like, well, no. Like, I like it here. I want to stay here. And Henry's also like, well, think about it this way. We're also going to have soon, like, the Mogs are probably going to, like, figure it out that you're here, so we might as well leave anyways. So, John is to use his power on Henry here just to stop Henry, and we kind of have both Henry and John fighting it out here. And so John is like, yeah, I can use my power now. It's like, why wouldn't John have really just wanted to, why wouldn't Henry, as soon as John's power started to kick in, why wouldn't Henry start training John? Did Henry never get these powers as well as John did? Why isn't Henry wanting to teach John how to use these powers? Because really, John could get into a number of life and death situations. And for John to not have this power under control just feels like a nuclear weapon walking around. Like, it just feels like this guy is going to accidentally kill a number of people simply because he doesn't know his power. Like, that kind of feels like either like Superman or just really Brightburn, where we of course have like a guy that can have any number of superpowers, and what if they all come to him all at one time and he just freaking like doesn't know how to use any of them, and they're all just scrambling him, and all of a sudden he just accidentally like slices a man or a woman or a goat or something in half, and they're like, oh like, you just technically killed somebody. And so like I was waiting for that to happen for some people with some I was waiting for someone to have superpowers and murder somebody by accident just because, like, they didn't know they had these powers. But anyways, so John is to say that they're staying, and so like for anything that's going to happen here, like they're gonna go on and just stay. And so really that's the plan, that they're gonna like wait till these Mogs come in and gonna go on and just kill these Mogs when they come. So we also have Sam that's texting John, who is mentioning like, "Hey, I know who you are. I know what you are. Like, meet me tonight," kind of thing. So we also have Henry, who's showing John some website about his leg lighting up with the brand that he was getting, and so it seems that John can't get into the firewall of this website, and so we're having Henry telling John that he's going to give him a day to just kind of say his goodbyes, and then they're going to try to run out of here. They're going to try to leave. So John goes on and speaks with Sam, and Sam is saying that he has all these pictures, all of this evidence upon his phone, and so John is to just go on and take this phone from Sam and realize, dude, you have nothing. You have nothing on me. And it's like, okay, sure. So, but really just John coming here is to just showcase that Sam is technically right about him. And so at some point we just have John who has to forcibly come clean to Sam and tell him the truth. Because out of anybody, it seems that Sam is to really be the only guy that's on John's level. We also had Henry that went on and was checking in on Sam's dad and was to go to this mine to go on and ask what exactly Sam's father was working on here. I think Sam's father's name, I think, was Matthew. So it seems that Henry is to find out that Sam's dad was to actually try to help the Lorians try to meet together. That it seems that Sam's dad was going and trying to find these rocks that had crystals in them, that when they can combine, they can go and track all of the others and help find them. So, hence why we have these just two like halves of a rock that both of them find, and they combine it together to now know exactly where all the other numbers are. So we go on here, and so I want to say that there's probably another scene with number 6 in it, because I think she has like 2 scenes, and then they go on and they finally have this big reveal of who she actually is. Heaven forbid I actually know who she actually is enough to know what all those scenes are. So we go on here, and so Henry is just to go on and tell everybody everything at this point. Because the Mogs are coming in, and they're going and buying turkeys that are just being tossed to their beasts. And we, of course, have the Mog commander, who is kind of wearing this disguise, so he looks like a normal person. And so this review is going to be all over the place, because it is what it is. There's a lot to talk about in this film. There's so much freaking going on, unbelievably so. So we all of a sudden have it where after John is talking to Sam and telling him the truth about everything, we all of a sudden have John who's getting a call from Henry's cell, and it's not Henry. We, of course, have some other guy on the phone who I guess is to be Frank in this movie, who I guess was to be the owner of that website. So we, of course, go on and have both John and Sam who are like, okay, like, we got to go on here and rescue Henry. So we, of course, go on here and have John realized that him going to Frank's place was all a setup to help the Mogs try to get to him. So and I think there was also some part in this film where we had John and Sarah where like I think there was a moment where John was at some party that Sarah was at, and so John was trying to talk to Sarah to let her know about him and to give him to for John to give Sarah this photo roll to like show all of his secrets to her because he loves her. And Henry is saying that when they love forever. So Mark is also to try and confront Sarah at this party because he still loves her and so on and so forth. But we again have it to where, of course, John now has to protect Sarah. And at one point, he has to kind of showcase his power to her. And so then when Sarah is to develop all these photos, she, of course, ends up realizing who John really is and is wanting John to, of course, show Sarah her power, his power. So to kind of make sure that this isn't all just photo editing or whatever. So, and Sarah's to have this camera that has a bunch of like these lens flare things going on that makes a more interesting photos supposedly. So, but let's get back to the whole mod trap thing. So we go on here and we of course have it where one of the mods are to go on and kill Henry and just stab him but not kill him right away to where he turns into ash. So we go on and we have both John and Sam and Henry running off so that way they can hope that maybe they can come up with a way to save Henry here. But instead, we just have it where John is watching Henry die, and he turns into ash, and he, of course, is to be no more. So we go on and have the mods go and meet with Frank, and they go and they're seeing how this guy has a bunch of comic books and all these toys and whatever. And so he's like, like you guys have cartoons for children and this and that. So we go on and we have the mod commander here who is to go and show this little toy that is to go in Frank's mouth that is to basically slice and dice this guy to where I'm sure he's going to just bleed to death. So, and die horrifically. So I guess it kind of keeps the secret of who these people are. So we go on further within this film where we go on, we have Sheriff James and we have his son Mark that are kind of driving down this way here as we have all our characters kind of gearing up for war, going on and going to this school where we're really going to have it where these guys are really going to finally fight it out. So these mobs are going on and grabbing this Sheriff James and killing him off, and then grabbing Mark and saying like, hey, if there's ever a time where you're thinking like, hey, I'm going to save the day, I'm going to be the hero here, don't do it. Just come with us and we'll just kind of like do what we need to do. So we of course go on here, and now uh, we have the Mogs who are going on to this school and going and are on their way to fight out John here at this school. So of course we also have it popping off where finally the beasts are to get revealed in this movie, and so Sam is to drive on with Bernie to make it to this school also, and Sam is leaving John a message saying that he has his dog, and so they're heading to the school also. So we go on here and we have the beasts that end up getting out of the back of this truck, and so that all of a sudden has Bernie change into his monster that he of course is going to be for this film, which is to supposedly be what I would say is a crawl, but I think they ended up calling it possibly something else in this movie. Um, but I would assess or assume just called a crawl. So we go on and we have all these things popping off. Where now number 6 is to finally meet up with number 4 as she is bashing her way through this one door using these blasters, and so now it's revealed that both 4 and 6. I'm like, where's number 5? Is it like, are they gonna find out that 5 is just somehow dead because maybe they're gonna finally start killing these characters out of order, because it seems like they have to go and kill all these things out of order. I'm curious, like, why do they have to go and kill them all in order? What does it matter? Like, I don't get what the whole difference is in killing them in order means. I don't get it. Uh, like, I don't think it should actually matter. But that's just me, I guess. So we push on. We're pushing on even more here. So we go on and of course have like 6 coming in here with a bunch of blasters and alien tech. So obviously making it seem like she is just the better out of the two of these, because it seems like she is to go on and know a lot more. So of course we have 6 who's asking for, hey, where's your guardian? And 4 is saying that he's dead, and 6 is like, well, so is mine. So we go on here and we go through and have 4 and 6 go after some of these Mogs. And so 4, of course, is going after the one Mog that is to kill Henry and slice into him and kind of do him in like he had done Henry. And so we have Crawl, or we have Bernie, who goes after the beasts and is to, of course, kill them off, all 2 of them. And so after that, we have Bernie, who, of course, is to turn back to Bernie, and he's just kind of wounded, and he's kind of limping along, and he's just kind of bleeding in the shower. But I think he's doing well enough to where at the end of this movie, he just kind of shows up and he's like, hey, my leg still hurt. Like, hey, can you guys pick me up? And they don't even bother trying to, like, look up on him and, like, just, like, look at his wounds and, like, like, try to do anything for this dog. I guess they're just like, nah, he'll heal himself eventually. Like, it's a dog. Like, who cares, right? Like, this dog is bleeding. This dog is bleeding a lot. What the fuck? Like, they could care less. Like, it seems like this dog had to do a lot of work in this film at some point of this scene that he's in. This whole fighting maneuver scene, whatever. So, really, let's get towards the end here. So, we, of course, go on to have John going and fighting this commander all on this football field. So we also had the one time where 6 was asking 4 to give her to like hit her, which basically meant to like power her up, and because she really needed some an energy boost. because she was exhausted, and I guess Red Bulls for wussies. So, so I'm like, wait a minute. So can Six use is that's why she has these guns? Is she using her power to just make these laser guns? Not quite sure. But we had John who's kind of doing this like force block kind of power, which I thought was kind of cool. For these guys just using these guns, which kind of become pointless. So now back at this football field, we of course have the commander. We have John, who are really just facing off here. So we of course have it where it feels that the commander is going to kill number 4, and what really happens here is we have it where number 6 can go through somebody, and then she ends up going and grabbing John, and John of course is to use his power to go and blast of course the commander's vest of uh, gun ammunition, let's just say gun gun batteries, gun whatever the heck that stuff is, all across his chest, because again, another technically sound thing that we have no clue what any of this is. So all of a sudden we have, of course, the commander who explodes, and all of a sudden with that explosion we have, of course, number 6 using her power to shield this whole mass explosion, and we now have 4 realizing that number 6 is fireproof, and we of course go on and say that number 6 is to have a number of weapons at her disposal compared to number 4 here, that she can go on and do a number of things. So we go on here and hurrah, hurrah, and so now it seems like the next thing for them to do is just to leave this place. Because, of course, we need to have them go on to another town to go and find another number, and then to go on and find more Mogs, because I'm sure they're setting up franchises, those Mogs, and so they're like Mickey D's. So really at the end of this, it's the cliche-ish like ending to a movie where we of course have John who is to leave Sarah in Ohio, um, even though Sarah really wants to be a girl that is to leave this town. It seems like she's not going to be able to be ready to do that just yet, because she's still having the rest of her school year, even though Sam is going off and leaving with these guys, because I guess he's to be proven that one, Sam needs to go and find his dad and meet up with him because he wasn't in this entire movie. Plus, also, we have it to where, like, Sam's stepdad is really rude to him and is to go on and, like, pinpoint every wrong thing that Sam is to ever do. So Sam is just like, you know what, I don't really care about this stepdad. I want to go and find my biological dad, because my stepdad just doesn't understand me. So we go on, and we of course have it where we have 6 go and combine these 2 rocks together to have them trace where all the other numbers are. And so that was the point of putting those 2 rocks together. And so Mark is to go on and give John John's father's box, which we still didn't uncover what that is, but I'm sure the books did. So that's great. Because we're never going to get another one of these movies unless it's a reboot. So, and they try to do it a lot better, but I don't know. That feels just kind of really just very iffy to me. It just feels like they're going on and just wanting to make some money off of something. But anyways, so we go on and we have both number 6 and John and Sam and Bernie, who's still injured and wounded, and they just pick him up and like, okay, let's just bring him on into the car. And so they drive off and they're like, okay, like we're gonna go on to find the other numbers and go and help them out. And really, that's going to be it for our story here. That's all that's going to be really focused, and that's all that really matters. So, with that said, speaking of what only matters, I'm gonna get myself to matter out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody. Hopefully, I covered most of this stuff. There was some stuff where I pretty much forgot about, or there was stuff that I didn't deem important enough. Um, and so this movie is kind of very generic, but when looking at it, there's some fun pieces about it. Eventually, uh, at some point, John getting to know his power and him being able to hone in or master that power was kind of interesting. Um, but anyways, I think that's all I want to say about this movie. I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.